Sign-up and password reset flows can be some of the most important aspects to your application. That's why it's important to ensure those flows complete successfully end-to-end. Hi, I'm Luis from Mailsac, and in this guide, I'll walk you through a complete example on testing your email deliverability for password resets, completely automated with Cypress and Mailsac. Cypress is a powerful tool for web testing, known for its ease of use and robustness. It's got a great balance of functionality and simplicity, and today we're going to see it in action. Also for context, I'm using a Next.js application with authentication that I've cloned from Martin Person over at dev.to. Here's a link to the repo. It's also additionally linked in the description. I'll be using this application throughout the whole video process. So let's break down the basic structure of this video. First, we'll quickly walk through our current sign-up and password reset flow. Then we'll secure the password reset flow from leaking emails to your customers using Mailsac. And then we'll automate this entire manual process using Cypress. So let's get started. I'll quickly run through our sign-up flow just to know what we're working with. I'll start up with my Node server and its development environment. Now, here's the sample application I'll be using. It's a basic application whose sole purpose is to just have a login, a member section, and a password reset flow. So let's just quickly create a new user. And to keep this video focused, I'm going to test account creation and password reset flows as one whole process that we're going to test. It's relatively straightforward, just to split this in half in the future and test both scenarios going forward. I'll then move on to the critical part of this video, the password reset flow. I'll go ahead and navigate to the password reset screen of my app and enter my email address. And as you can see here, I have this application live and sending emails right now to best simulate a real application in production. You'll want to follow the testing concepts in the video for both production and development, and I'll show you why shortly. Here's the email that we received, and from here, I will go ahead and reset my password just to complete the whole flow, end to end. So of course, the first major issue is that we're sending out live emails in our testing environment. Although our example here is a bit contrived, it does have the benefit of testing an email that gets delivered to the end user. Ideally, we'd want the best of both worlds, the ability to verify email deliverability and to do it in a way where we don't actually send any emails. Luckily, that's where Mailsac comes in. Mailsac streamlines your email testing with email capture, unified inboxes for your teams, full API management, and more. For our particular use case, we'll want to use the email capture feature. This is far from the only feature we have. From what you can see here in the docs, you'll mainly need three things: Mailsac's hostname, your Mailsac username, and your Mailsac API key. Let's go ahead and substitute those in now. Let's confirm now that our password reset flow does not actually send out any email to my Gmail demo account. After a refresh, so far so good. So let's actually confirm that email was successfully sent. Let me log into my Mailsac account, and then I'll type the email address I used. And there's our email. We can go ahead and click the link to take us to the password reset window. And finally, resetting the password to complete our flow. Before I move on, I do want to point out that I can also view my captured emails in my unified inbox that shows me all the emails relevant to my account. So that's our manual, now safe to test password reset flow. But let's take it one step further and now automate all of this with Cypress. For the Cypress portion, I really just want to accomplish two things. I want to replay the same scenario I did manually, but do it in an automated fashion with Cypress. And I want to add an extra step that verifies that an email was successfully sent to the end user, which in our case is a Mailsac inbox. Cypress is pretty easy to get started with. I'll start by installing it. Then I'll open up the Cypress app. And on this guide, I'll focus on E2E testing or end-to-end testing and use Chrome as our main driver. So here's our initial set of tests that come with Cypress. Let's generate a new spec and call it password reset flow success. Let it run its default steps and let it fail. Now let's go ahead and write our own set of checks. I'll first replay the password reset scenario. Let's start with renaming the describe portion. Let's get rid of this default visit and start adding our own custom code. So it should start by visiting the actual localhost. Then it should find the button with a class that contains the sign-in text. And now the URL should include the login slug. And here's where we run into our first problem, where we need to pass the credentials over to Cypress. We can do that by using the Cypress environment variables. So let's start with username and password. These environment variables come from the config option in Cypress, or the config file. Right here in variable, you'll see the base URL, and we'll start with our username that we used, and then the password. Keep in mind, this should not be an actual live password. It should be a password that's only registered to your test environment if you are committing this file to code. So now that we have the credentials, let's go back and continue to navigate to our forgot password section. This section is to specifically click on our forgot password link. And now the URL should include forgot password. Now let's get to the typing of the actual username. We'll start with finding the input and inputting our username. The next line is that our text that we entered into the input box should actually show up. If you're familiar with React, there can be moments where the value is not reflected in the actual input. Now let's grab our reset button and hit reset. And we should, if successful, be redirected back to our login page. So let's give it a run and see. Oh, we're currently logged in, so let's go ahead and log out. And it works. Now that's fine and all, but to go the extra mile, let's add in the ability to ensure the email actually gets delivered. And for that, we can use Mailsac's API. The API comes with a node library that we'll use in this testing scenario. Let's go ahead and actually install it. Now, if we want to hit the API, we'll of course need our set of credentials. They are identical to what we already have in our environment file. In order to read our environment file, we will need the .env library. And let's go ahead and import that onto our config file. And we'll also need to import the Mailsac library. There are a lot of ways to do this, but I like to use tasks so it keeps the actual testing clean. We can do that in the config file. Now to start using the client, of course, we'll need our API keys. And in the previous section, we set it as mail password. And as you'll see in the Mailsac documentation, it expects the keys in a header object, like this. So now we have a client. What can we do with it? Well, if we head on over to the Mailsac documentation page, we'll get a clean list of everything that the API can do. And for this purpose, we're really just trying to see the number of messages on our inbox. So we can go by list messages for an email inbox. It's Mailsac messages. Of course, it needs an address. So in our task, we can pass along the address. And after returning the messages, we'll just need to deconstruct the object and pass along the data. So now we have our first part of our task ready to go. Let's go back and start testing it. Actually, before I continue here, I realized that we should really call this check mail. Check Mailsac mail. Now let's create our actual task. We'll use a callback function and to check our mail, I'm interested in three things: the reset URL, the subject, and the original inbox it was sent to. So let's try and grab those right now. You can find out more about how these objects are constructed on the Mailsac API documentation. All right, now how do we actually check that these objects are what we are expecting them to be? Well, Cypress includes an expect function to do a comparison. Our application sends password reset emails with this subject. And the original inbox should be equal to the username that we're using. And now let's actually use the reset URL so that we can actually take a visit to it. The reset URL is a token URL, which is why we're obtaining it from the message response. And now in our case, we're interested in actually having the full URL redirect us to the reset URL and not redirect us to any other page. So it should include the reset URL. All right, now let's try it in full. All right, looks like there's an issue with our config file. Let's take a look. This is not in the right section. It needs to be in the end-to-end section. Right here. Let's go ahead and restart. And there we go. We're back to the main spec location. Let's go ahead and actually run our tests. One more error on line 34. Always forget the closing parentheses. Let's give it a shot now. There is a built-in feature in Cypress that assumes, and we saw this earlier, that assumes that you want to be logged in from the get-go. That's not the case for us right now, so let's go ahead and turn that off. You can find it under the commands file. And this is the culprit at the moment, so there's a couple of ways to remove this or change this. I would say let's go ahead and just comment it out from the end-to-end section, since we don't actively need it. And let's rerun our test. Looks like we have an error, and of course it's usually something small. We are missing here a period. But you can tell through the testing in Cypress that it's relatively robust at each step, and it takes screenshots of every portion of your file as the app navigates. So let's go back and actually fix this error. Cypress flow success. Let's include the period. And as we save, it'll automatically rerun the suite of tests. And there you go, successful test. Now let's go to our Mailsac account. And let's check our demo account. And yep, these are the tests we've been sending throughout the session. You'll quickly see a problem here where we have verified the tests, and now we really want to clean up after ourselves. So let's go ahead and implement a delete all messages so that every test tends to clean up after itself. Let's implement a delete all messages API command. As you can see here, Copilot wants to fill in the required API, and this is correct. Delete all messages from the address. Now there's a slight difference here where we don't necessarily want to return data, we want to return a result. If it succeeded, which will return true, or else it should return false. And keep in mind that success status is 204 and not 200. So we'll want to include the delete email task inside of our check mail task so that every time it gets to this portion, we want to make sure that it actually executes a mail cleanup. So let's do the delete email task. And then we expect the result to be true. And that's it. Let's try it one more time. And there we go, back to the reset password screen, and all of our email has been purged. So that's automated email testing using Cypress and Mailsac. We've really barely scratched the surface of what these two tools can do together, like verifying email contents and chaining a whole sign-up flow, onboarding emails and cancellation flows. But as a bonus for making it to the end of this video, let me show you how you can run these suite of tests without invoking the Chrome GUI, thereby running it headless. This lets you theoretically run this password reset flow in your continuous integration tool of choice, like GitHub Actions or Travis. You could also pass along a -- record option to record a video of it and upload it to Cypress Cloud. So if you're interested in us making a guide for GitHub Actions with Cypress, just let us know in our forums. We also have a guide on how to use Selenium alongside GitHub Actions that's linked in the description. This has been Luis from Mailsac. Till next time.